Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to give you my thoughts about these handheld devices. So let's get started. Now, due to my condition, which I'll leave a link down in the description below, I'm kind of forced to sit idly by for 5 to 6 hours in an infusion room, basically doing nothing or watching TV. So instead, I'd rather take that time to play some games. Now, originally I was using the Steam Deck as my main source of entertainment. For starters, this is basically a PC that you could play all your PC games in, and definitely run emulation if you wanted to. You see how I have emulation station and I can play all these games, etc, etc. Well, the couple of downsides to this is that it's big and bulky. It weighs about 691 grams. And again, while it is portable, it's still not as portable as you want. Like, you can't just fit this in your pocket. Also, the battery life on this, if you are planning to play any of these PC games, will actually last you about 2 hours, 3 hours at most if you lower the brightness and everything and adjust the TBD just to get more battery life out of it. Again, one of these don't last a whole session, and I don't want to bring a whole charger setup just to charge this up or add more weight to it to put a battery pack on this. So while I can play all the games that I want, like Star Trekker or Wukong or and all this other stuff, it's not ideal for portability and longevity. Like, I can't use this for 1, 5, or 6 hour session because the batteries just won't last that long. But if your games are PC only, then you have no choice other than to use a Steam Deck or some other devices that will support PC games. Now, next up, because this doesn't last that long, I decided to reach out to ETA Prime to ask for some suggestions on portable handhelds that I could play some retro gaming, which in turn will last a lot longer. My main thing was I need battery life. Anything that could last over 6 hours is good for me. So he did come through and gave me 4 devices. Now, one of the devices I'm not showing right now because it's just way too small. I even forgot the model number because I gave it to my nephew. But besides that point, he did give me 3 devices over here. One which is the Emberneck RG355, which is this big device right over here. It does have support for emulation, so you could play all the retro arch systems like PlayStation 1 all the way up to PlayStation 2 on this device. And it's also backed by an Android. So we are running Android 13 on this, which allows you to actually install Android games. So like if you play Genshin Impact or other Android games, you can install it on this device and play it and use a controller support. Now, this is a 1920 by 1080 screen, so it is a normal 16 by 9 aspect ratio, which most games support. Now, being that I only use these for retro games like Super Nintendo or Game Boy games, I am going to lose the aspect ratio and everything will be cropped. So it doesn't make a huge difference to me. Now, I got to say, I did put 5 to 6 hours on this machine on one day just to play around with it. This is the closest to a Steam Deck that you can get. Now, I'm not sure the weight of this guy, so we're gonna weigh it right now, and this weighs about 345, which is half that weight. It's still pretty light, but it is not as portable as these other 2 that you see on the table right over here. So holding it up is pretty comfortable. I wish it did have like some back buttons over here because I'm so used to it from the Steam Deck. But no, actually everything on this is very comfortable. Starting a game, like if I was to go into, say, I'm not going to preview any games, but on a sidebar, if you're interested on all the specs on each one of these devices, I'll leave a link to ETA Prime's video for each one of these devices. I'm not really going to showcase most of the games or anything in here. I'm just giving you my thoughts on what I thought about portability and everything that I needed compared to what I was using, which is the Steam Deck. So here we have, let me see if I have any. I don't have much games in this because I didn't load up too much games in this. But I do know I have some Game Boy Advance games. And if I was to load up, say, Advance Wars, this is one of my favorite games. This is how it would look like. It's not bad. For Game Boy Advance, it actually works really well. The crop is very small. And I could get all the way to the edges, especially on something like this. And it's got big zoom. I could read all these buttons. So if you have a problem with like small font or anything, this will scale it up and actually give you less of a border, and it works very well. So it has like, that's how the game would actually look like. If I wanted to get out of it, I could just go back to the retro station and then play another game if I wanted to. But yeah, if you're playing a game that actually supports this full widescreen, something like PSP, it looks so good, especially when the aspect ratio fits everything on the screen. Something like a PSP game works so nice. This is Lumens 2, and just look at it. It just looks so good. On a screen like this, because it's full wide, there's no cropping. It runs, especially on the speed that you want. And there we have it. This is like a PSP game running on this, and it runs really good. But especially, like I said, the aspect ratio on this works really well if you are planning to play newer games that actually have this aspect ratio. So it's up to you what you decide on that. But for me, I'm playing more retro style games. So I'm not going to be playing PSP or really anything above that. But if I do, this is how something like that would look like. Now, next up, I actually really like this device, which is called the RG Cube. Slightly lighter weight than this, but the battery between the two, this has 5200 milliamps and this, I think, 5700 milliamps. This could last 7 hours, and standby time is ridiculous. I could leave this for a couple of days and it'll actually idle for that long, and I'll still be able to pick it up and it still has battery for me to play games. Now, this also does run Android itself. So if you are planning to install anything that's Android based, you still can do it with this, especially if you're planning to play games like Genshin Impact and stuff like that. Now, the biggest difference between this and that is the screen size. Now, this runs 720 by 720 and it's more of a 4:3 aspect ratio, which fits more of the Game Boy Advance era game. So if I was to play something like in Game Boy Advance, let me just start up a game. You're gonna have a little bit of the borders. Well, Game Boy Advance actually has a widescreen. So you know what, it might not even be a perfect example, but a good example would be a Game Boy Color game. That's what I meant. And yeah, you can see it looks pretty good on this. I'm gonna see if I could just exit this and go into a Game Boy Color game, which I am actually currently playing. How do I get up? Oh, I don't even have a favorite. For a Game Boy Color, it actually fits the aspect ratio, and you can actually go in and get rid of the borders, but I like to keep the borders just so I know that I'm currently playing a Game Boy Color game. But yeah, you can get the aspect ratio to perfectly fit on this device, and it works very well for retro gaming. Now, I could see this very well, and I do enjoy using this device. I actually put, I think, 10 to 15 hours on this device just playing around with more retro games like Super Nintendo or Game Boy Color versus this guy where I was actually using more of like a PSP, PS1, and PS2. And yes, these two devices will support up to PS2. So you can get a decent amount of games on both these devices. And again, they both run Android, so you could actually install Android games as well. As far as portability goes, this almost fits in your pocket, but it doesn't really. You still have to carry it around. But it is much smaller than this because this will definitely not fit anywhere that you're normally used to. While this you could probably squeeze this to some place and get it to fit. Now, I thought I was really gonna like this device because I've been using it for so long. Then I decided to start using this device, which is the Amernek 35XX SP. Now, this is the cheapest and the lightest of all of them. And it runs its own little operating system, which you can actually change to like something else called Garlic OS or whatnot. But I actually like the default system because it actually allows me to play Nintendo DS. And reading up about Garlic OS, you lose Nintendo DS support and a few other system support, but you gain other game support if you are going to switch over. But I actually enjoy using the stock system anyway, so I'm not planning to switch it over to Garlic anytime soon unless I want to tinker with it. Which again, this operating system compared to these other operating system, which is Android, I have no headaches with this. I could actually just give this to my nephew who's 6 years old and understand how to start a game versus this one. You have to press this button, then go to that, then read this, and it's just not as intuitive. I mean, it's pretty intuitive to get through the operating system for the Android-based systems that you have, but not as intuitive as this one where you could just go to Game Room or RetroArch Games and just select the system you want, and then it shows you pictures of exactly the game that you want to play. Ultimately, I like this device for most retro games like Super Nintendo or Game Boy Color, or even DS or Sega Genesis. This definitely fits into your pocket anywhere you want. And again, once you close it, what I like about it, it closes the screen and it pauses your game. In the middle of something, if somebody needs me or reaches out to me or something like that, I could just close this lid, put it in my pocket, and then whip it out later, but the game will resume where I was from before. So I really do like that compared to these where I do have to, well, it's not a huge bother, but you just press the power button and it could go to sleep. Now, about these two devices going to sleep, what I notice is that when you do go to sleep with these devices, with the Android, it still runs on full power, emulating the game and everything. It just closes the screens and everything. It's good if I need to use the bathroom or whatever it is, I need to pause it, do whatever I need to do, come back and it'll be fine. But if you forget about it, it'll drain the battery by the next day because it was running the emulation in the background. I'm not sure about this because I've never ran it that long where I left the game running overnight, but I don't think this seemed to do that. Or it might just, but in a different capacity because it's not running Android in the back. Now, checking out games, like right now I'm currently playing a Game Boy Color game. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna go to my favorites. So here I have R-Type, and I forgot what the screen size is on this, but it's not a perfect 4x3, so you do have a little bit of border. Sometimes I do like that so I know what system I'm on, but otherwise it does fit in the screen very well. I can see it very clearly, and it's something about the style of the SP where it just feels very familiar to me, where playing a retro game on a device like this just makes more sense than playing it on one of these newer devices. So I really enjoy playing games on this, especially something like this where I could just close the screen, I know it's paused, open it back up, and I'll be right back into the game that I was playing. Just everything about this just makes sense, so I really did enjoy this. Now, compared to the 3 or compared to all 4 of this is only $70, which is by far the cheapest device that you can get. And I just have so much fun playing like this, basically Super Nintendo games or Game Boy games off this. And right now I'm actually going down my collection. Now, what I recently discovered, which is pretty funny, is I am a huge cheater. Now, I'm at the age where I don't want any more frustrations than I need from a game. So, playing the games that I used to play, like R-Type, Gladius 3, UN Squadron, Earthworm Jim, whatever, all those games that I used to play, Aladdin, I don't know. Going back to it, wanting to replay some of the games, or actually trying to finally beat some of the games that I couldn't beat when I was as a child, but using Game Genie or game cheats to enable unlimited lives or something like that, just somehow makes the game now more enjoyable. Like right now, this R-Type game, R-Type 3, as a kid, I've never been able to beat this game because it got really hard later on. And once you die, you go back all the way to the beginning. So it got to a point where this game will frustrate me. But if I head over to cheats, I could actually just enable always have super shot, infinite lives, and whatever. I'm untouchable. By enabling some of those, makes this game so much more enjoyable. See, now it's always full blast, and then like if I run into them, I'm not gonna die. And it somehow, playing it this way, in a sense, knowing that I will be allowed to kind of beat the game stress-free, makes the game so much more enjoyable. Like right now, I could just leave the game like this and I'll be able to beat the stage. I mean, I wouldn't. And again, I won't enable cheats that are like game breaking. So if I'm going to play Final Fantasy 7, I'll make it so I have maybe unlimited HP or unlimited MP or whatever to get through a game quicker, and maybe disable random spawns or stuff like that. But I won't make it where it unlocks all the characters, unlock all the summons or whatever it is. So in a sense, what I mean is I will still try to enjoy the game as it is, but I will enable some cheats to help make the game a little bit easier. But if you guys are planning to start retro gaming, I urge you to try it. Just use Game Genie, turn on something. It's a game that you always wanted to play as a kid or whatever it was. As you're playing it through, try to do something that will make the game a little bit easier. It actually makes the game a lot more enjoyable for me, at least. Anyway, in conclusion, out of all the devices, I ended up not using the Steam Deck anymore other than at home because I want to play PC games with my son and I could watch TV and stuff like that. Between these two devices, I will come back to later. I do like the Cube more than the bigger one, which is the RG355. I don't have any Android games that I would play that will actually fully utilize the Android system. So as of now, I'm not using these as much. But the device that I pick up almost every day now is this handheld. I just pick it up, play a couple of minutes, just because of how portable it is. If I need to go somewhere, I could just put this in my pocket, run, and then do whatever I need to do, and then call it a day. So yes, I just prefer something with its own operating system that I don't have to deal with on Android, and able to play older games. That's basically nails it. Battery life on this is amazing. I think I could get 7 hours out of this, no problem. I haven't really tested it because after each session, I still have plenty of battery left, like 30 to maybe 35%, which means I probably have another hour left or whatever. So it could definitely do 7 hours or 6 to 7 hours on this. But yeah, anyway, I am still looking for recommendations for games. Any games will do if it's retro. I'm playing a lot of them. Like I said, if it runs a little bit too hard for me, I just end up turning on cheats, and then I'll get through the game a lot easier. Anyway, if you have any questions about these devices, let me know down in the comments below. If you guys are new to the channel, consider subscribing and also hit that bell notification icon so you know when the next video is going to be out. And as I say in my nerd cave, hack till it hurts.